Aloha and good evening, everybody. We hope you are ready for our 10th episode of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. We've got a lively presentation for you tonight. Let us know where you're calling in from, where you're zooming in from. We're not going to start quite yet until we can let a few more people into the room. But meanwhile, if you want to say aloha to any of the Dawsons, if you just want to let us know where you're calling in from, where you're zooming in from, if you just want to say hello, then aloha. We look forward to this evening. Aloha, everybody. It's Thursday evening. We're getting ready to start ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. This is our 10th episode since October. We have a really exciting Wahine family cluster for you this evening. We've got some really lively sisters and a mama that are going to talk story tonight. Give us a few more minutes. We're going to let people into the room, let people log on to Facebook. We'll start in just a few minutes. Meanwhile, where are you calling in from? What island are you calling in from? Are you here in Hawaii? Are you zooming in from somewhere else? Let us know. Okay, we'll be starting in just a few minutes. Mahalo for joining us. Mahalo for joining us this Thursday evening in 2021 for our 10th episode of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa with our families. Tonight, we're featuring the Dawson family, a legacy of Annie Kanahele. Who was Annie Kanahele? We'll find out tonight. Aloha, everybody. Oh, I see Deborah there. Where are you calling in from? Where are you zooming in from? We'll be starting in just a few minutes. All right, pretty soon. I know we're all anxious to get started. We're all anxious to start talking, to meet the offspring of Annie Kanahele, a Hawaiian woman. That's what tonight is all about, but we want to let a few more people into the room. Aloha, welcome everybody. Let us know where you're calling in from. Talk about Hawaiian values, Hawaiian families tonight. Okay, well, shall we go ahead and get started? Aloha and welcome. Thursday evening, 7 o'clock for our 10th episode of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. This special series was developed during the pandemic. We didn't have a chance to meet in person, so we brought you a series of family groups, women groups, to talk about to talk about what's Hawaiian. What does it mean to be a Hawaiian woman? It's a series that celebrates intergenerational mana of Wahine. Tonight's presentation is called The Legacy of Annie Kanahele. It features Beadie Kanahele Dawson and her daughters Lunny Dawson, Arena, Malia Song, and Donnie Dawson. Our sponsors for the program tonight are Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge at the University of Hawaii, Hawaii People's Fund, which gave us the grant that has enabled us to bring you this series, Papa'ololokahi, Native Hawaiian Education Association, and Oiwi Television. Mahalo nui to you all. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And now, without any more delay, let's meet, let me take this off. Let's meet our special guest tonight. Okay. There we go. A few housekeeping things I just want to let you know. My name is Kim Ku'ule Burney. I'm a member of the planning committee of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa, which is an all-volunteer hui of women in health, in education, in business, across the board, who are coming together to feature the programming, to bring you the programming that, that you, Hawaiian women and your families, have been asking for. Tonight for the webinar, this is on Zoom, and we will be live streaming on Facebook and across many different platforms, so you can watch there if you like. There will be an evaluation at the end. We welcome your comments, and welcome. If you have questions, we will get questions toward the end. You can put those in the Q&A field in the bottom. If you have any general comments, put them in the chat. We're not going to get to them until the second half of the program, to the second half hour, but we will answer your questions. So, mahalo nui. Our first three guests, I would like to introduce you three sisters. Lunny Dawson Arena is an attorney, and she's the eldest daughter of Beadie Kanahele Dawson and Donald Dawson. Then we have Malia Dawson Song calling in from Maui, a nurse at the Kamehameha schools. And then we have Donnie Dawson sitting next to Mama, Commissioner of the Hawaii State Film Office. And we're going to talk to all of them in a little while. But really, we want to talk first with Auntie Beadie Kanahele Dawson. Aloha, Auntie Beadie.
Again. Aloha.
How are you tonight?
Oh, very well, and very happy to be talking to you.
I'm happy to see you too. So I have this book in front of me, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's called Annie, Life of a Hawaiian, the autobiography of Annie Kanahele. What is that book about? Who is Annie Kanahele?
Well, can I answer that?
Please.
I would like to answer that because I sat side by side with Annie when she wrote that book, and it was a glorious experience of learning about my mom, her background, and each and every one of us. So it was a privilege, and I'm happy to be sharing with you now. I'll just add too that my mom edited the book. My mom edited the book, and when she says she sat side by side with my grandma to make this book come to life, she really did. She took all of her notes and writings on legal pad and napkins and whatever, and put it to the final book. So I credit my mom and her writing skills with bringing that story to life.
So what is the story? What is Annie's story?
This is the story of a Hawaiian woman, from her birth in Kona, her growing up, the life and times that she grew up in, the people that were surrounded her, and the events that surrounded her, She was just a remarkable woman, both as a young woman and later in life after her family was well established. And I'm very proud to say that these are primarily the words of Annie Kanahele Dawson.
Annie is Sam Kanehele.
Sorry about that. I just gave her my last name.
Yeah, not Dawson, right? Tell us a story about.
Can I add something? Annie Kanahele is our grandmother, my mom's mother. And just to put it into context for our many viewers, she was born 3 years after the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. She was born in a time of upheaval, a time of loss of the kingdom, of identity, of our language, all these things. She was born in this very tumultuous time. She was also born, she straddled old Hawaii in her younger years, and then was a part of modern Hawaii as well. So just to give you that context of my grandmother's life.
How do you think that influenced her?
She was, as is my mother, a fierce advocate for Native Hawaiians. And I think that, she had a love of her people, a love of her language and her culture. So in her later years, she was advocating for Native Hawaiians. She was teaching the Hawaiian language. I also think it shaped her because she was a woman of great courage, and you had to be a woman of great courage to survive everything that she survived. So, she came from a time of tremendous hardship, whether it was the tumultuous times and the degradation of the Native Hawaiian people that was, happening at the time of the overthrow, to having typhoid fever when she was 9 years old and losing all her hair. So she was part of old Hawaii, but she was part of the ushering in of new Hawaii. So the way I think it really influenced her was she's probably one of the very first of the movement to revive our culture. My grandmother was part of that.
Oh, I just love that insight. So, Auntie Beadie, how do you tell us an anecdote, or can you tell us a specific story about your mother's life that might reflect some of what Lenny has shared with us?
Well, I think growing up as she did at a very, very difficult time, this was reflected in her young life. She was the child of an old family. Her stepfather was pure Chinese. Her mother was pure Hawaiian, and Annie was straddled in the middle of these two cultures and loved every one of them. She had a great love of humanity, which I think hopefully I and my children have inherited from her. We have been a family that has helped other families, other people, all of our lives, and enjoyed doing so. It was not a difficult thing to do. It was one of pure joy to be able to help others. This is the story of my mother. Growing up in those early years, she was frequently ridiculed, if you will, for having a Chinese stepfather and a pure Hawaiian mother, but she never ever let that bother her. She used it as a platform for helping others, and did all of her life. And I must say that with all of her children, she instilled that same passion for helping others. People came to Annie's house all the time. If there was someone new in the community, it was go to Annie's house, she'll help you out. or if they were long-time kamainas, it was talk to Annie. She will help you through whatever problems you have. As a teacher, which was her profession, she just enjoyed helping people through the most difficult times in their lives. And people adored her for that. Long after she had disappeared, and long after her life was over, I still have old timers coming to me and saying, "Oh, you are Annie's daughter. She helped me do." They will relate some story about how Annie had helped them through a difficult time in their lives, and was just so proud of it. And everybody came to her. She was the go-to person in her community.
It's
That's
interesting.
lovely.
It's interesting because she passed on this love for community to my mom and to all of us as grandchildren. And I remember Mom would tell these stories about how she would go along with my grandma on these house calls when, back in the day, these teachers were like fully invested, and they went to the homes of the kids that were struggling, or the kids that they knew something was going wrong at home, or they were truant and they didn't know why. And my mom, as a young girl, would listen in from the outside. You'd be like out on the lanai, right?
Well, I was very good at
you'd be
eavesdropping.
listening, eavesdropping on the conversation. And what kinds of things did you glean from those conversations?
Well, what was interesting is that my mother, without even formalizing it, practiced the art of having people express themselves, only of themselves, not of accusations, but of talking about themselves, where they were in life and what was troubling them. She would go to each one of the families and talk about, why are you failing at school? We know that you're failing at school. Now let's find out why. Let's find out how we can change that. And of course, in the process of working with these families, she would find that they were struggling with poverty. They were struggling with serious racism. Many of them didn't have jobs, and so were on welfare of a variety of things. And so with all of these multiple problems, Annie, as a school teacher, both as a young school teacher and then older, and as a teacher all her life, she was able to look into the lives of people, find out how best to help them, and help them she did. Everyone knew Annie.
Lovely. I love hearing that story. You mentioned a moment ago that she was also remarkable as a mother. So I have a picture of her as a mother with her 3 daughters. And I wonder if we can pull that up. And you can maybe tell us what's going on here. Thank you, Miley.
Auntie Patsy and you and Auntie Muriel and Grandma. So this is in Grandma's backyard.
Oh, what a glorious upbringing we had. There was never a dull moment in our home. Annie was right at the center of it. And my dad was also right there. He was the strength, the stalwart part of our family, making sure that we were all safe, that we were all doing the things and had the ability and the capability of doing the things that we wanted to do in life. Annie and Frank, there they are.
There's Grandma and Tutu.
Grandma and Tutu. They wanted their children to have the best opportunities, the best education possible, and that's exactly what was laid down before each one of us. And with the challenges laid down before us, our job was to make the very best of it. We all went to mainland schools in the course of growing up. Two of my sisters, college. Two of my sisters graduated from Kamehameha. My brother and I graduated from Punahou.
And why was that you went to the two different schools?
Well, my dad was the one who masterminded that. At some point, we all thought that we would go to the same school, no matter where it was. And so with two sisters at Kamehameha, I thought, well, this is my future. I'm going to go to Kamehameha. My dad called my brother and I in and said, you two are not going to go to Kamehameha, you're going to go to Punahou. I don't want all of my children to have exactly the same education. I want diversity in our education. We used to talk very frequently of, I want the eggs in my basket to be all over, and I have all kinds of opportunities. And that's precisely what we did. So my brother and I had a great education at Punahou. And my two sisters, Patsy and Muriel, were educated at Kamehameha. I must say that at first I was very, very
disappointed.
I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken that I couldn't go to, that I wasn't going to be allowed to go to Kamehameha. But I started at 7th grade at Punahou. And you know, children being flexible as they are, I learned on from the very first day the wonders and the happiness and the excitement of being with new kids, new friends, a new surrounding, and we made the very best of it. My brother and I had a wonderful time at Punahou.
And also formed lifelong friendships there that, have continued to this day. So maybe you can talk just a little bit about the Hawaii, the fact that Mom, Grandma, and Tutu were native speakers, and they continued that. While you folks didn't learn, but they actually spoke Hawaiian in your household.
Well, one of the things that we all remember is that my parents were both fluent in Hawaiian, and we knew that whenever there was something that children should not be privileged to, they would lapse into Hawaiian. So we knew that whenever they spoke Hawaiian, there was something that was slightly not risque, but there was something that they didn't want the children to have full knowledge of. So we listened with such avid interest. Whenever they spoke Hawaiian, we knew we had to try and translate in our own minds because we wanted to know what was going on with those two. And they had a beautiful marriage. They were two people that were just beautifully in love all of their lives. They cared for each other and for their children. And the whole community knew that Annie and Momi, he was called Momi for his middle name, Ho'oka'a Momi. So many people knew Momi. And as an engineer and she as a teacher, they took care of each other in the most beautiful, intimate, and happy way, bringing their children into the full development of our own lives. It was brilliant.
And did all of your children get to know their grandparents too?
Yes.
Well, grandma, obviously, but Tutu passed away in June of 1960. And that was when my mom was hapai with me. And Leah and Lonnie were lucky enough to meet him. I don't know that they remember, but Leah and Lonnie were both born in Montreal, and they can talk about that and why they came to be born in Montreal. But my Tutu passed in June of 1960, and I was born on January 1st of 1961. So Mom and Dad gave me his name as my middle name, Francis. His first name is my middle name.
Aw.
But we all grew up knowing and loving our grandma. She tried desperately to teach us Olelo Hawaii, and we kind of were distracted and didn't pay as close attention as we should have. And I could kick myself now for that. But we used to take turns spending the night at her house, and that was always exciting. And we'd kind of fight over whose turn it was next.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Great. What's the next photo we have here? Oh, all right. So I found a couple of news articles. This one has Annie Kanahele receiving the David Mallow Award. But what I learned in talking with you folks is that she was the Mother of the Year. How did that come about?
I'm not sure how you could say it, except that they have the Mother of the Year or the Person of the Year is something that happens every year. Someone is chosen for their outstanding
community service,
both as an individual and as a parent. And when Annie was chosen, the community rose to such a happy celebration of this wonderful woman that had helped so many people. And when she went to Washington, she took all the best wishes of Hawaii with her and was an absolute smash hit over there because everybody fell in love with Annie.
So it was not Kim just the David Mallow Award. She also got the Living Treasure Award from the Honpa Hongwanji, and Mom went on to get the same Living Treasure of Hawaii Award in 2017, I believe it was. Grandma's was in 1982, and the David Mallow Award. Of course, but she was just, this amazing community leader. Her home church, her lifelong church was Kaumakapili Church. And I loved hearing the stories from people that would tell me, oh my gosh, your grandma was my Sunday school teacher. And she was fierce. And she, you didn't fuss around in her class. And it gave me a little bit of, because by the time we knew her, she was retired from teacher and becoming and principal. She wasn't doing that anymore. So it was really interesting, at least for me, to hear stories of what she was like as a teacher and a principal.
Well, I was just hearing a story. So Grandma Annie was born in Kona, but I heard a story where she actually was a teacher on Maui for a little while. So I wonder if Sister Malia could tell us this, what she knows about Grandma being on Maui.
Well, Donnie's the historian, but it's interesting because Grandma Annie, she lived in Keokea at the Episcopal parsonage, and she taught school at the Keokea school there, and then taught Sunday school. There's a huge Chinese community, and I actually was able to go up to the Shim Gardens today and look at the Sun Yat-sen temple. But I mean, that's where Grandma was all over that area. That was her stomping ground. She had a pig, she had a garden right there at the church. And then she traveled by donkey up to the Kula Sands, the Kula Sanatorium, and taught a private family up there. But so it's so funny how you have a weird or just a misconception. When I heard that she traveled by donkey to go and teach, I thought, oh my God, how did she do that? That must have taken her all day to go and all day to come back. And then I go up to, Keokea, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's walking distance. So it wasn't that far, but I too, I've lived on Maui for almost 30 years, maybe 27 years, but when I first moved here up into Kula and I went to the post office, the postmaster there think his name was Akiona. Anyways, he's since retired, but he was like, oh yeah, yeah, your grandma taught me. I think it was at Kaumakapili. I'm not sure. No, maybe it was over here. Maybe it was there. And anyways, she was like, yeah, she was so strict. I was so afraid of her. And people did tremble in their boots, but that was, I think, part of, like if you read in the book, it talks about how stern parents were and teachers were, and kids were expected to toe the line, but discipline was done not, there was no hanging on to things, like how, especially us women, we can hang on to things. There was no hanging on to things. You were disciplined, you got it, you learned the lesson, and then back to, forgiveness and love. And one thing I just want to say that's very interesting, because I just pulled out my Annie book and I read it. I first read it when I went away to college, and I've got all my notes and underlines in it. And I was constantly comparing back then to now. And I think there's still a lot of Hawaiian families who live the Hawaiian values, where kids are they're not spoiled, and they are meant to work in the household and to participate in the business, and it's an the work ethic is incredible, and that was something that she pointed out in the book, that the family as a unit worked together. And then in my notes, I'm just like, yeah, wow, we're so lazy. We've had so much privilege that I'm grateful for, but it was really enlightening to see how really as parents, we need to be intentional in our bringing up our kids, because they are like sponges. And a lot of times, and grandma felt this way, that you didn't just do things for people, you help them do it themselves. And as parents, sometimes it's so much easier just to, I'm guilty of it, of just doing things for the kids. Our dog would have died if my daughter had been the one, her job was to feed the dog, but we, oh, she didn't feed the dog again, so we would feed the dog, but there's lessons learned, not in killing your dog, but in not letting kids get away with doing their kuleana around the house. So anyways, I found that very fascinating, that grandma lived that both as a child, as a mother, as a teacher. It was all about kuleana and love. That was grandma.
I love that, kuleana and love. But, I think that's more applicable, or might be more applicable, because you're not just a mother, but you actually work for a school. You work in a school setting. So do you try to integrate those lessons that you read about grandma into the work that you do? Well,
it's interesting how I wound up working at Kamehameha schools 18 plus years ago. My kids had just started going there, and what was hilarious was when they got in, I think she was like the office coordinator. She was telling my husband, where's your birth certificate? We don't have your birth certificate. I'm like, hello, I'm the one with Hawaiian. He's Chinese Korean, but because I look white, they assumed that he was the one with Hawaiian. But so my kids started going to Kamehameha, and then one of the library assistants said, "Would you ever think about working at the school?" And I thought, wow, that would be amazing, because I do want to learn more about my culture. Because Donnie's right, we missed so much, and I think we have to be careful as we try to promote our kids to succeed in today's society, that we don't lose our roots. And I kind of felt like Punahou was a great school. It was, I'm not going to say I didn't get a great education. I did, but I missed out a lot on the Hawaiian part because I didn't go to Kamehameha. Not that I have the same kind of envy that mom had. I was happy where I was, but when I had the opportunity to work at Kamehameha, it really, instead of just being a growing environment for my kids, it was a growing environment for me. And I can tell you, as a employee there, they practice and integrate all the Hawaiian values. And for me personally, as a nurse, being able to malama and show the aloha to the kids is awesome. To be able to partner with the parents. I love being able to talk to the parents, and we work together in order to, make sure that the kids stay in the classroom. My job as a nurse, why do you have a nurse at Kamehameha? Isn't that kind of overkill? But it's not, because our goal is to keep our kids flourishing, to keep our kids in class. And the whole thing about grandma doing home visits. Kamehameha does the same thing. And it really is, not as a nurse, but what we do foster those who are struggling. And it's just been a huge honor. We try to incorporate Hawaiian language and Hawaiian values as much as possible. When the kids come to the health room, they're supposed to pick their part of the kino that is hurting, and anyways, it's just been an incredible journey there, and I've just been so honored.
Well, that's a great story. I love how you have learned there, but even before you got there, you had kuleana and love already. Let's talk to Lenny for a little while. Lenny, you're the oldest sister. In fact, I've got a few photos of all of you kids with your mom. So I wonder if we can see what the next couple of photos, I forgot what order they were in, but we've got some great photos. So aloha, Lenny.
Aloha.
Ernie, you're living on Oahu. Oh, back to Mama. Okay, well, let's go do a keiki photo. Can we, Leimali, can we go to the photo of the kids on the, I love that. There.
Oh,
yeah. I love that one. It might be the last time you were the tallest child in the family.
Probably.
You notice Lonnie is perfectly accessorized with her hat and her purse, and I'm the one in bare feet.
And is that how it is today? Is that how it is today?
Yes. No.
No, Donnie's perfectly accessorized today, but in those days, not so much. That was an Easter Sunday, and that was at St. Andrew's Cathedral. One of the values that my grandmother and mother and father, for that matter, really instilled in us was a deep, abiding Christian faith. So that is the church that we grew up in. It's the church that I ultimately got married in, and Leah got married in. It just was our home church for many, many years. So that was an Easter Sunday. I would guess, I don't know. Well, my brother's an infant, and he's 6 years younger than me. So I'm probably 6 or 7 there.
Well,
it's about 1962.
There you go. Donnie's the historian. She knows.
So I know that you're a lawyer, and I know that your mom is too, but I'm not quite sure who was a lawyer first.
So my mother was the lawyer first. We went to law school at the same time. She was actually a year ahead of me. I had the intention to be a lawyer much earlier than she did. I made that decision when I was in high school, and I took a senior sort of like a workshop class that was all about different taught by a local attorney, all about different areas of law. In the second semester, we were able to work in his office, and that was it. That cemented it for me. So his name is Ian Maddock. Haven't spoken to him in many years, but he's the one that awoken the love of the law for me. So I had that in mind, you know, from the time I was in high school. So mom had a career with the Department of Social Services. Actually, she had a quite varied career, but when we were in high school, she was the communications director, if I'm remembering correctly, for the Department of Social Services. And then she decided to go back to school, to law school, and she started a year before me. So I was still at Stanford when she started law school. So we used to, you know, call and speak on the phone and compare notes a little bit. And it was fun just having that academic interest and conversation at the same time while we were learning.
Yeah, that must have been amazing.
Kim, what Lonnie is leaving out is that she started at the University of Hawaii after she graduated from Punahou, and she won't say this herself, but she was the first Truman Scholar from the state of Hawaii, and that is what got her to Stanford. And the Truman Scholarship, I believe, it was established by Harry S. Truman's daughter or granddaughter, Lonnie?
Daughter, and there was a foundation to you know, perpetuate his memory and his values. And the first year of it was 1977. And nowadays there are 2 scholars per state. But in the year that I became a Truman Scholar, and I was in the first year of that scholarship, there was 1 scholar per state. So I was the scholar for the state of Hawaii.
And did you studying political science or law or?
No, but when we were tested, before we even got to the interview stage, we were tested on such a wide variety of things, everything from art, history, language, you know, culture, just a very mathematics, very wide ranging, comprehensive test. And then I was flown to Denver for an interview because the scholars had to be interviewed by the panel that was making the selections. And that was fun for me. That was the first time to the mainland since I'd been a baby and moved away from Montreal. But that scholarship was a huge honor, and
Yes.
it paid my way through Stanford and paid my way through law school. It was a very comprehensive scholarship and a great honor.
That's excellent. So as the oldest, you got to spend the most time with your grandmother probably. So I want to hear a story, but before I do, there's this great message in the chat. At Kaumakapili Church, it was Na'anake, Annie Kanahele, and Martha Hohu, Auntie Beadie, that set in our na'au the importance of being Hawaiian and our love and dedication to Keakua. Both were instrumental in sustaining the love of the Himeni in the development of the hymnal Na Himeni Haipule Hawaii, and I'm sorry, it's skipping over here. What else does it say? And the interpretation of hymns into the Hawaiian language, Olelo Hawaii. Amazing story. Do you folks know anything about that?
Absolutely. And Auntie Martha was the, you know, just as Grandma was the heart and soul of Kaumakapili in the Sunday school realm, and the starting of the free store and the starting of the Kalihi Palama Clinic, where you could, she wanted anybody to be able to have health services and not have to pay for it, and to be able to go walk into a room, and if they needed something, you know, clothing or books or toys, that they could get that and they didn't have to pay for it. And so Grandma was the heart and soul of that, and Auntie Martha was the heart and soul of the music of that, of the musical legacy of that church. And I can still remember as a young child going to that church, and I really, you know, because as Lonnie said, we, you know, our home church was St. Andrew's Cathedral. That was Episcopalian, and it wasn't a, you know, we had Hawaiian language services, but Kaumakapili was like, you know, Kua'aina church, and it was a little nerve-wracking to go there, but I just remember Auntie Martha and how beloved she was, and Grandma and how beloved she was in that church and that community, and the same stories, you know, Kahu Kaleo Patterson, you know, oh my gosh, I can't you know, I can't ever forget your grandma because she was the strictest Sunday school teacher ever. But anyway, it's a beautiful memory. I'd love to know who wrote that about Kamakapi.
Arona, I can tell you.
Oh, Uncle Henry's
Arona, James Arona.
James Arona, and yes, Arona. No, Arona. I know.
Arona. All right.
No, so I think he's the postmaster from Kula.
I think you're right,
Jimmy.
Leah. It's related to that family, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You better let us know, Arona family. We want to know who you are. Okay. Pat Lee is watching on Facebook, and she asks, is Mrs. Kanahele the same person that was at Kaloaloa Elementary School? I remember her picking ilima every day and making a wristlet or flowers for her hair. I loved her.
Yes. Yes, that was her. That was her. And
yes.
I have to tell you, Grandma grew ilima in her yard along with all the other flowers. And she taught me how to make ilima lei. And if anybody knows anything about making ilima lei, it is so hard. And it takes so many flowers. And they're super delicate. And Grandma taught me how to, you know, you pierce the flowers on kind of like a styrofoam back, because you can't handle them with your hands too much. But for my senior prom, she made me an ilima lei po'o, and it was all the ilima she had. She didn't have enough to make a full lei, so I proudly wore the ilima lei po'o that she had worked so hard on, and Puakeni from her yard. Well, it wasn't from her yard, but Puakeni I wore as well.
Well, I know that your puakeni lei are way superior to my puakeni lei. Auntie Beadie, do you remember any of these stories about your mama?
Oh, absolutely. If there was one thing that Grandma loved, it was her gardening. She taught me to love plants and growing things. I grew up under her tutelage and my dad's tutelage. We planted, we took care of the violets, the plumbago, the Mexican creepers. We had so many flowers in our yard. And Grandma and my dad loved gardening. And to this day, it is my great happy hour is when I'm out in the yard, when I'm pulling weeds or planting or what have you. That's when I am happiest. I'm an outdoor person and I love gardening.
She tried to instill that in us when we were younger, and we did a fair amount of complaining.
Didn't take.
Yeah, well, it takes now for me. I have discovered it in my older years. I find it very therapeutic to like pull weeds. But I remember as a child just, crying and, pitching a fit and telling her that
Mommy, you're so mean.
You're the meanest mom in the whole wide world because you're making me work in the yard instead of going to the beach with my friends. But anyway, I loved that. And Leah now is like, Leah's entire garden in upcountry Kula is been transformed by she and her husband Alan. And these are all these little gems that we're discovering in real time here. These are things that were passed on to us from our grandma through our mom to our present day lives that we don't even know are legacy gifts, from our kupuna. And I'm really proud of what Leah and Alan have created up country.
He's overstating it, but but I'm having fun. It's the COVID It's the COVID.
The COVID gardens.
It's a COVID garden, and it's just, it is so crazy with that all this stuff is going on in the world, and then you go out in the yard and you just have this peace. It's just it's incredible. It really is. So Mom, it did take it just, you know, kind of taking a little while.
So there's a question here, and I'm going to hold up this book just for a second. Romy asks, apparently Romy has a copy of the book, and the question is, who is Lealoha Kanahele, the artist who drew the sketch that's featured on the cover, the cover of the book, on the cover of the book, not the back.
Lealoha is, we called Duty, and she is probably what her father had 14 children, and Duty was one of my very, very favorites. We would visit, she would sometimes come and stay with us, and she was a very gifted artist. We have a couple of her paintings at the Pacific Club and at various other places. We have all enjoyed her talent. She's not here anymore, but you know, that's the beauty of paintings. The paintings live on long after you do.
Is she your cousin, Auntie Beadie?
Yes, she's my cousin. Her father was Clinton Kanahele. He actually was not a Kanahele, he was a Vestal, but he was adopted by the Kanahele family. And he was the school principal for many, many years. And we all loved Uncle Clinton. And as I said, he had 14 children and they were all talented, every one of them.
One of whom was also George Kanehele.
Yes.
The infamous, our Uncle George Kanehele, who, you know, wrote the book. He wrote the book on Pauahi. He wrote the book on the hospitality.
George and Ed and Edward.
And Ed and Antipua Kanakaole, Kanehele's husband. So yeah, that was a very manaful family, and Auntie Duty was no exception. She was my favorite auntie growing up, and I loved going over to Kaneohe to go and visit her. But she did that cover sketch of the hala tree on Grandma's book.
Oh, lovely. I knew this hour was just going to fly by, and we've hardly, well, you've talked, Donnie, but we haven't really talked about you. You know, we kind of, so you're the commissioner of the Hawaii State Film Office. You are working with all the films that come to Hawaii here. How do you, and we'll just get right to it because, you know, it's almost 8 o'clock, but how do you take the lessons that you learned from Grandma, that you learned from Mom, and from your whole family? How do you imbue that in a very, in the job that you do, right? Yeah. Because it can't be easy.
It's not easy. And I've been doing it going on 20 years now. And I will say that every bit of my job draws on what I learned from my mother and what I learned from my grandmother, every bit of it. My mother, my grandmother were like commander-in-chief problem solvers. And that is what my job requires, is solving problems every single day. And now it is at a extraordinarily more complicated level because of COVID. And I have to draw on Annie's wisdom every day. I have to draw on Beadie's wisdom every day. And I will say that my grandma, you know, she used to always say to me, you know, you're going to be the one to take care of the family, Donnie, right? You're going to be the one to take care of the family. And she gave me that kuleana, and I took it very seriously. And it's with me every day. And with the job that I do, with people coming from all over the world to tell their stories, and in many senses tell their stories about us as Native Hawaiians, is very difficult to take. It's difficult to accept. And because Hawaiians, we're kind of now at this very critical juncture in our lives where I think that we're wanting to take back the reins of the last 100 years of storytelling that has been outsiders telling our stories. And so a big part of the Annie legacy and the Beadie legacy is educating filmmakers about who we really are and what the Hawaiian people represent and what our true history was and what we want the world to know about us. And what we want the world to know about us is not what has been represented over the last century of films that have been made in and about Hawaii. So I, you know, and I've taken hits for the embracing of my culture in the work that I do, but I will stand firm on the fact that you know, he Hawaiiao, and I cannot stand by and allow people to go forward not knowing what they don't know. And I think that we have a responsibility to educate and to share. And that's what my grandma was all about, she was all about sharing our story, the plight that Hawaiians have gone through all these years, and the fact that we are still kukanaka and we're still standing here today. So I really feel that you know, it's an eye-opener for me to hear my sister speak and to hear my mom reminisce about these stories, because what it says to me is that Grandma Annie is alive and well today in our lives and in the lives of our children. And, you know, I went, before we started tonight, I went down the street to Grandma's old house, and there is her puakeni tree that still thrives on that property. And the property owner says, you know, you come and pick any time. And that's the time that I go down there and I have my little talks with Grandma. And I love wearing her flowers in my hair because I feel like she's with me. So I feel we are all supremely blessed, and all the people who are listening in who have their Annie stories have all been touched by her. And it just, you know, it just brings tears to my eyes because it means that she is with us. Her spirit is with us.
That's beautiful, Donnie. Thank you. Speaking of an Annie story, this is from Poka Lainui. You know him, Auntie Beadie.
Absolutely.
In 1965 or 66, I was recipient of the Kanehele Scholarship, which allowed me to continue to finish my bachelor's degree at UH Manoa. I subsequently met Annie Kanahele, and on numerous occasions in various affairs. On one particular occasion, we both attended an affair at Kaumakapili Church dealing with the resurrection of things Hawaiian. When my daughter was born, we wanted a Hawaiian name for her, and it was Annie Kanahele to whom we turned for a name. Mahalo for this program and for the reminder of the role of Annie Kanahele to my development in my work here in Hawaii. And that's from Poka.
Oh, mahalo, Poka.
Yes. His words.
You know, I just want to put this on the record. Kaumakapili Church and the United Church of Christ and the Congregational Church is the only church that took a formal stand and apologized for their role in the overthrow of the monarchy in 1893. And that has always stayed with me. And that is something that that our grandma would have been very proud of.
That's right. And then James Aarona came back to you. Auntie Annie was a superintendent of our Sunday school at Kaumakapili. Malia, I was the postmaster at Kula Post Office. It was exciting when Annie's book was published, and she was interviewed one day after church as she gave much credit to Kaumakapili and that she was led and blessed by God. A true Christian Hawaiian woman. Mahalo for sharing Auntie Annie's life ventures. So let's take a look at the other photos we have, the ones that we haven't seen. And Auntie Beadie, if I could just, I want you to keep your mic open while we look at the photos and, you know, tell us what's going on there. And they're going to pop up in a minute.
It's Punahou, class of 47, Mayday Queen.
That was at Punahou up by the
Dillingham Hall, across from Dillingham Hall.
Across from Dillingham Hall, the big lily pond is. We held our May Day festivities.
She was Mayday Queen, 1947.
Lovely. All right, the next photo. What's the next photo? That's this is you with your mom.
Grandma and mom, and I'm not sure where that is.
Sitting
That
on
looks like the outrigger.
I think that's
it looks like one of the clubs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is at the outrigger.
Nice. What's the next photo, please?
That was Grandma's 80th birthday in Kona.
Oh, when did she move away from Kona?
When she was a young girl.
Young girl, and she wanted her education to be wider, broader, and in order to benefit all of Hawaii and the world. Grandma was a man, like a man for all seasons. She didn't
woman for all seasons.
Woman for all seasons. She didn't just care about her neighbors, while she did, but she cared for everyone, regardless of where they were from. Foreigners, local people, mainland people, they all came to Annie.
Lovely. Next photo, please. So
that was, I can tell you where that was. That was in Malai Kahana. And that was a grandma sitting there watching while we played football on the beach with my Uncle Al Yee's family. So Malcolm Yee, Eric Yee, Ian Yee. Ian is married to mom's bestie from high school, Auntie Emma Aluli Meyer.
Yes.
And
their children are doctors.
Yes, but Ian is married to Luana Meyer. And but this was at one of our infamous beach football days, and grandma's just lounging under the tree.
So I love this photo. I love, love, love this photo. And in 15 years, I'm going to make me a bunch of long mu'umu'us and go to the beach and lean up against trees just like this and watch my mo'opuna go crazy at the beach.
Yes, perfect.
Next photo, please. Oh, okay. We've seen this one. That one's
Easter.
Oh. Is this 4 generations, Lenny?
Yes. So this is me, grandma, mom, and my son, Taryn Keahi, and he was the first great-grandchild. So I brought him when he was just a couple months old. We were living in California at the time, and he got to meet his great-grandma.
I thought this might be the first 4-generation photo. Great. I love that. And the next one, next pic.
That is Christmas, this very most recent Christmas. My brother Christopher and the sisters and mom.
Yeah, and
my brother's dog Lovey.
And I have to say that he is he's the youngest of the children, but he is truly the leader of the family. He has grown the Dawson Corporation from 3 people to 800. And they are located all over the United States and in foreign countries as well.
Well, that's another program. We need another hour to talk about Native Hawaiian organizations.
Yes.
And I think we have one last photo.
This is Koho'olave. This is Koho'olave, my brother Chris in the background. And then there's mom, my brother's daughter Kylie, me with Leah and Alan's 2 girls, Lena Ala and Alana. Alana, who's in the white jacket, is now an attorney for the Goodsill law firm. And Lena Ala is a doctor at Kaiser and in internal medicine. And then you recognize Kekalike Mar, who is led us on this one particular trip. This is up at Mo'ulaiki at the top of Koho'olave. And then my sister Malia and her husband Alan Song.
Beautiful. And of course, there's a picture of you, of Auntie Beadie and Leah and Donnie that we are not showing here, but I would say that's probably one of my favorite mama sister photos.
Yeah, right.
So, oh, I've gone over time. I'm so sorry. Auntie Beadie,
Yes.
Donnie, Leah, Donnie, we had a great time. We ran out of time. I apologize for that. We could talk so much longer. And, you know, this was only 10 photos we could show. You know, I know you have hundreds of them, but I want to mahalo all of you for sharing a little bit about Grandma Annie or Mama Annie with everybody who's watching today, who's listening, and kind of telling us what kinds of values that you got from Grandma Annie, who grew up during that tumultuous time, and how she was really resilient and how she thrived and how she raised happy and resilient children, which, you know, now we're 2-3 generations later. So mahalo to all of you for sharing with us today.
Mahalo to you, Kim.
Mahalo, Kim.
Mahalo, Kim.
Our pleasure.
I'm so glad to have you. So to all of the fans of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa, this is, and I think this is the time where I share screen again, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. I want to mahalo you all. This was the 10th and the final episode of this particular series, brought to you by ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa and a variety of sponsors, which are right here: Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, Hawaii People's Fund, who gave us the grant for this series, Papu'ololokahi Native Hawaiian Education Association, and Oiwi TV have all been supportive of this series in various ways. I don't have an announcement for what's next. This was the last, as I said, of this particular series where we featured mothers and daughters and sisters and grandparents and aunties during this series. But if you follow us on our website, if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, we will have an announcement soon, and we'll start another series in the summertime. So mahalo to everybody who tuned in tonight for all of your ongoing support of ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. And someday, perhaps 2022, we will meet again in person and we'll share with each other. In the meantime, to the Kanehele Dawson family, aloha kekahi, kekahi, mahalo nui loa to you all. To everybody tonight, aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, ahuiho.